This is the Plagmanrules podcast. It's been forever. So recently my channel celebrated its 6,000th view. That's pretty cool. So I think to celebrate that I would bring back this podcast thing. I gave it a try earlier and you know what? I kind of enjoy doing it. And I think if we do a few topics every week and kind of keep it interesting there, I think this is definitely something I'll keep up. The plan right now is we'll do a show every Monday and a show every Friday, unless I can't do it or I know I have a family vacation coming up here later on in June, so I'll have to do something different for those days, or we'll skip it entirely. But we'll figure something out there. Okay, so this is I guess we'll call it the third edition of the podcast. And unfortunately, this third edition to the podcast, we have to kind of start out on a sour note. The first thing I wanted to discuss today was the passing of Adam West. This guy, in case you didn't know, was the original Batman back in the 1960s television series. The one that had the bang, pow, Batman, na 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 na. Yeah, you get it. And also, of course, famously played Mayor Adam West on Family Guy. And to be honest, yeah, I was introduced to Adam West first through the 60s Batman the movie, the first ever big screen adaptation of the comic book character of Batman. Yeah, I know everybody who loves the Nolan movies and the Ben Affleck ones now are just crying tears because the Michael Keaton one was not the first. No, it wasn't the first. Anyways, here's the thing you have to remember. And Adam West himself would say it this way, when it comes to the 60s, it was a decade of Bs. You had the three Bs of the 60s. Beatles, Bond, and Batman. The 60s TV show when it came on, I know nowadays everybody looks at it and they're saying the same thing. My God, that is the cheesiest shit they've ever thrown together. You know what? Yeah, it does look that way these days, doesn't it? But you have to, back in the day when they made that was their intention. They wanted to make a comedy show. It was nominated at the Emmy Awards for Best Comedy Series. And I think deservingly so. I think it's hilarious. I mean, it's over the top in the ways that it needs to be over the top, reflecting at the time some of the comic strips that it was based on. And I think that's a really cool idea, is to make it that campy. Nowadays we call it campy. Back then it was just comedy. And it was such a big hit. The merchandise of the character Batman and the pop culturization, if you want to call it that, of Batman had not happened up to that point. Batman, introduced in the 30s in the comics world, was inspired by stuff from the 20s and was created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger back in the 30s there, and it had not really taken off. Sure, there were a couple of serials back in the 30s and 40s, but they were not huge successes. The comics sold enough to keep the character going, but it wasn't until that 60s series that Batman became the pop culture icon that he has remained to this date. And I can't stress this enough, guys. If it wasn't for Adam West and his campy bullshit version, as some people would call it, of the show, you wouldn't have gotten the Michael Keaton Batman. You certainly would not have gotten the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy. And you would certainly not get what is currently known as the DCEU, with the Ben Affleck Batman. Because if the three Bs, one of those being Batman, had not happened in the 60s, Batman would have basically gone into obscurity. And he would have been one of these failed comics that would have never gotten to the point that it is today. Pretty much it would be like a Buck Rogers or to some degree, a Lone Ranger, one of those things. The Hardy Boys, nobody mentions these characters today unless they're making fun of something back that's old, Batman would have been one of those, were it not for the Adam West series. 88 years old. I mean, the guy had a great legacy just with the Batman series. But then, of course, in the early 2000s, when he became one of the biggest and best recurring characters on Family Guy, and actually just a few months ago, I started kind of rewatching some of that Season 3, Season 4, Season 5 Family Guy. Those are the seasons to watch. Because yes, and sure, Season 1 and 2 are good too. But Season 3, 4, and 5 is where that show takes off, breathes, and is just hysterical stop to finish. My family and I were going through the Netflix queue on each episode, and we're like, I remember that episode, I remember that episode, I remember that episode. With Family Guy, almost every episode of Season 3 is one that has a memorable laugh, or a couple memorable laughs, or a big storyline that you just remember instantly. And of course, a big part of that was because of the introduction of Mayor Adam West, who is hilarious in the show. Of course, he did some stuff on The Big Bang Theory, among other shows lately, so he was a busy guy. And of course, just last year, he had the animated Return to the Bat, or what? No, it wasn't Return to the Batcave. It was like the Further Adventures of the Cape Crusader, where he and Burt Ward came back to voice the animated versions of the '60s series Batman and Robin characters. And supposedly there was another one in the works that they are still working on, or maybe just finished or something, and they're planning on releasing. So that'll be another big deal too. Anyway, so I did want to just quickly give a send off to him there. 88 years old. Rest in peace, Adam West. Again, without you, we wouldn't have had the Dark Knight trilogy. We wouldn't have had the Michael Keaton and Tim Burton Batman films. And we wouldn't have the ever-growing, ever-expanding DCEU. All right, the next topic I wanted to discuss, switching over to Marvel now, we had our first teaser trailer revealed for Black Panther. So with Black Panther, this is an exciting character for me to see because I saw clear back in the day when they had the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes animated series that was on Netflix for a while. It might be back on now. I think they took it off. But I was first introduced to the Black Panther character there. And I'd heard, rumblings of it, so I knew the character name, but not what the character was about. Then with that animated series, I was like, wow. I said this, and then Ant-Man was also a part of the series. I'm like, these two characters, if they get them on the screen right, on the big screen in the Marvel Universe, they can take off. And I think Black Panther will take off. Black Panther is one where this will be the first Marvel Cinematic Universe film with a standalone African-American, or in this case, the character is African, hero. We just had our first standalone female superhero film of this modern-day comic book genre style of filmmaking with Wonder Woman. We'll get to that later here. But Black Panther, the trailer here, it's pretty well cut, and it's a really entertaining little teaser trailer. They're not going to give you a whole bunch of plot details. That's not what it's about. I don't think they should give those out yet. I mean, the movie comes out next February, so that's, gosh, do the math on that. That's 8 months away or so. So yeah, they got a lot of time left to advertise this. And this is what pisses me off about all these trailers especially for the comic book movies and these bigger budget kind of blockbuster films, is all the time you have these people complaining online of, we got to see the trailer, we got to see the trailer, we got to see the trailer, and we've got to see a significant trailer. It can't just be a couple images. And then as soon as they show a trailer, then they say, well, now you've given away the whole movie. It's like, well, what do you want? That always torques me off. I mean, not to get totally sidetracked here, but this is a good trailer that shows you images, doesn't give you a whole lot of story details, but gives you just a vibe of what they're going for. And that's what the teaser trailer is supposed to do. It's not supposed to introduce the story elements. It's not supposed to give you A to Z, here's what happens. But you don't want that in your teaser trailer. We got the same thing a few months ago with the Star Wars The Last Jedi trailer. That I thought was a very well cut trailer that gives you the general feel of what it's about and also gives you a couple of intriguing points. In The Last Jedi trailer, it was Luke's whole line, "There's one thing I know, it's time for the Jedi to end." And that was just a great way to end that trailer. Instantly, that's all you can talk about for the next few months. The same thing kind of happened with this Black Panther trailer with the opening parts where you had the Andy Serkis character, what's his name, Claw, messing with Everett Ross and talking about, what is Wakanda? Oh, it's this third world country kind of deal, and they're very poor and all that. And then Andy Serkis says, no, you're wrong. That's interesting. And of course, we did get a little bit of a leg up on his character from Age of Ultron, where he had a very brief, kind of almost extended cameo scene. And of course, we were introduced to Black Panther in Civil War. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the film. Ryan Coogler is a very talented director. Creed was number 3 on my list of the 2015 best films of the year. Chadwick Boseman did a great job there. Excited to see Michael B. Jordan as another Marvel character. He won't be Human Torch in this one, but oh well, we don't need to remember that anyhow. It'll also be great to see Forrest Whitaker, Lupita Nyong'o. We've got Daniel Kaluuya, who's a breakout star from Get Out from earlier this year. Just a really talented cast here, in addition to Martin Freeman and Andy Serkis there. And it's rounding out to be what could be one of the more exciting Marvel properties. But still, Black Panther, it's on the horizon now, so that's one we'll be looking forward to. Okay, next up, we'll get into the weekend box office. I think this would be a nice thing to do on Mondays, since the box office almost is the live or die in Hollywood, especially with these big movies. Anyway, so this weekend we had the release of The Mummy, which starts the what do they call it? The Dark Universe over at Universal? Yeah, that's right, the Dark Universe, yeah. Anyway, so this is with Tom Cruise and everything, and well, it didn't come in at number one, and frankly, I'm not surprised. Anyway, so Wonder Woman repeated for the top spot. It got, what was it, 58 million over the weekend, which is a good result. With The Mummy opening at number two, it opens to 31 million, not a terrific result. Overall, at the worldwide box office, it's closer to 175 million, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Tom Cruise opening of all time. That's a good result and great for Tom Cruise and a big rebound for Universal, because that, if it had done, say 30 million here and another 50 million total and 80 million worldwide, yeah, that would have been bad news. Luckily, though, yeah, it is doing very well in the overseas markets. Now, I haven't seen it yet. I didn't get a chance to see it this weekend. I'll probably be seeing it this week or next weekend, depending on what's going on. I don't know. I mean, I was intrigued by the movie, and I want to see, especially nowadays with the cinematic universes being the big deal, kind of like going to a candy store and you want to try every last thing in there. You got to have a little bit of a taste for everything just to see if you're going to like it or not. With this kind of result, you definitely, well, one thing that we should mention here, The Mummy cost $125 million to make, which actually for a Tom Cruise movie is not too expensive. Outside of him, I don't think they paid the cast a whole bunch. Like Annabelle Wallis, I don't think would demand too high a sum. Sophia Boutella would probably not be a huge bank breaker. Russell Crowe might ask for a little bit more money, but he's not going to be a 30 million, I don't think. Tom Cruise might be closer to that, 30, 40 million, closer, whatever. Definitely, and they have plans for like The Bride of Frankenstein, Invisible Man, more Frankenstein offshoots, Creature with a Black Lagoon, Dracula, basically all those old movie monsters. At the same time, kind of trying to mix it a little bit with those 90s and early 2000s Brendan Fraser mummy movies where they had those action-adventure beats. Try to throw that in a little bit too, which for me, I don't understand why you do that. If I want to see a cinematic universe of the monsters of classic Universal lore, I want to see them being monsters, killing people, attacking people, getting at people. I don't want to see Tom Cruise and Javier Bardem or whoever the hell else they're going to get in this. They want to get Jennifer Lawrence, Michael Fassbender. I don't know if they'll sign on after the results of this weekend, at least domestically speaking. But I don't want to pay to see Tom Cruise fighting a mummy. I want to see the mummy going after Tom Cruise and killing him. Well, maybe not killing him in the opening 5 minutes, but you get what I mean. I want to see him being monsters, not being formed together to do whatever the hell they're going to do and fight other monsters. No, I don't want to, I hope that's not what they're doing. A lot of those movies, like the original Frankenstein from 31, Dracula was also from 31. A lot of those movies, when you boil it down to it, they're love stories. Like Dracula is a love story. It's about Dracula coming over to England trying to find somebody, who will love him. And that was how they advertised it back in 31. It was the darkest love story ever told, or something like that. They had a saying in the ads just like that. But Frankenstein also had a little bit to do with the love story. Especially Bride of Frankenstein had to do with finding the monster a mate, hence a love story. The Mummy, the original Mummy, 1932 with Boris Karloff, was a love story about the guy rising out of the grave, trying to find the reincarnation of his lost love. There you go. That's what these movies are about. They're not about the mummies coming back to life and getting blown up by Tom Cruise. Like I was saying earlier, it's fine to do a monster movie or a mummy movie where the mummy comes up out of the grave and tries to kill people. They made 4 sequels back in the 40s with that, with Lon Chaney Jr. doing that. And I'm fine with that. But I don't know if this can work, if they're all going to be action-centered. Okay, fine. If you want to do the mummy action-centered, then Dracula has to be a love story. Frankenstein has to be something else. Do them in different genres. The way that Marvel has kind of started doing, where you had a political thriller with Captain America, the Winter Soldier. And then you had your sci-fi fantasy with Guardians of the Galaxy. And then you had your heist film with Ant-Man. Do it like that, and I think you'll have a much better success rate rather than Tom Cruise just killing everybody and blowing shit up real good every time out. I think if that's what they want to do for their cinematic universe, I think they'll find that's a failing strategy very quickly. Quickly, we'll mention It Comes at Night also opened over the weekend. 6 million. It was only playing in 2,500 theaters, so it wasn't a huge debut there. But still, I would have thought that would have been closer to, say, 7 or 8 million. Not a great result there. It wasn't an inexpensive film, so that's good. And then Megan Levy, this is one kind of surprising. It only landed in 8th place with, it was 3.7 million. It was in less than 2,000 theaters, so it wasn't going to be a $30 million opening. No way. At the same time, I would have thought that the word of mouth, which was the best of any of the 3 new releases, at least from what I've seen, there was also some free screenings for veterans that was going on in a few theater chains. I would have thought that would have immediately built the word of mouth up on this, but instead, just nobody went out to see it. That's too bad. I mean, I don't know if I'll necessarily see that one, but I would have thought that would have scored a little bit higher on the domestic box office charts. All right, and with that, I do have one more thing on today's podcast. The big movie everybody's been talking about the past couple of weeks is Wonder Woman. All right, so without further ado, here is my review of Wonder Woman. To set the scene, I was done. I mean, done with the DCEU. Man of Steel didn't satisfy me. Batman v Superman was a failure as well. And Suicide Squad, well, I thought it was utter garbage. These films just weren't for me. So why should I shell out $8 or $9 more bucks to see Wonder Woman? Well, after the critical surge and the comparisons to the original Superman, which remains my favorite superhero movie of all time, I was bought in again. And while this time, DC didn't disappoint. Combining the fun elements of the Richard Donner Superman with the seriousness of Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, Wonder Woman is a strong sign that DC has their heads on straight now and that perhaps the first few films were just a bumpy start. As heavily advertised in the trailers and ads, Wonder Woman is the origin story of Diana Prince, who is born Princess Diana of Themyscira. While at first her mother is tempted to shield her from the warrior ways of the people, Diana insists and soon she becomes one of the strongest women on the island. But her life is changed forever by the appearance of Steve Trevor, a World War I spy who crash lands near the island and who brings with him the German army who is pursuing him. After a battle, Diana agrees to travel back to London with Trevor, and soon after arriving, she plans to kill Ares, the god of war, whom she believes is responsible for the Great War. As the two travel and form a group that fights their way to German high command, Diana becomes quite a hero to the innocent civilians, and who knows, maybe one day she might just don the title of Wonder Woman. One thing that superhero films rarely get right is the chemistry between your hero and their squeeze, or in this case, the heroine and her man. The only recent example I can think of that worked was Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone in the Amazing Spider-Man series, especially the second one. Now, I can add Wonder Woman to the list. Chris Pine and Gal Gadot are dynamite together, especially in a scene where the two are on a slow boat from Themyscira to London, and the two just chat about stuff. Pine has shown in recent works like Hell or High Water that he's more than just a pretty-faced actor. He's also got chops. And those chops are back, and he elevates the film with his performance. Gadot also shows significant improvement from her somewhat amateur work in Batman v Superman, and she is well on her way to becoming a great actress who plays a superhero. Think Chris Evans in The Avengers, where he doesn't exactly knock every line reading out of the park, but he's less wooden than he is in Captain America the First Avenger. Also, the World War I setting is a breath of fresh air for the superhero genre. Sure, the First Avenger was set in World War II, but the World War I setting provides a more gray area of bad guys instead of the easily evil Nazis. The action scenes, for the most part, are well executed from director Patty Jenkins. One individual scene that impressed me was a liberation of a Belgian village by Wonder Woman and her crew. That one will stay with me the same way the warehouse fight in Batman v Superman did, or the airport battle in Captain America Civil War. As mentioned earlier, the film strikes a pretty good balance of the lighter fare and the darker elements. And the dark element example is a spoiler, so I won't cite it directly, but those comedic scenes between Pine and Gadot are a great example of the lighter fare. Also, while the film is more than 2 hours and 20 minutes long, it's quickly paced and doesn't feel that long. Well, until we get to the final conflict. That's where I get into my negatives. The final battle scene is very much overblown and overlong, and the effects get sloppy as well. The villain of the piece is kind of weak in execution, but strong in build-up. I know some who disagree with me on this, but still, I wasn't a gigantic fan. Also, there's this secretary character introduced right when we get to London, and the best way to describe her, a little of her goes a long way. Again, I just wasn't a fan. I get why she was there, but she didn't do it for me, and she came off as annoying rather than funny. And again, the end battle throws off the pace of the film, and that's the only time when I felt the length of the movie. It went from a film that was breezing by to making me say, yeah, I've been sitting here nearly 2 hours, haven't I? And to kind of restate it, Gadot has a few moments here and there that just feel like they could have gotten a better take out of her, and some of her line delivery is a little sloppy. Also, the film's opening scenes on Themyscira are a little slow to start. I get they're setting up the island, which we haven't seen on screen before, and they want to establish all that. but still I felt they could have picked up the pace a little bit in the opening 10 minutes or so. But then after that, we're golden. Also, it goes without saying, but the character of Wonder Woman has been around for like 75 years, so it's about time we get her on screen. Not to close out the review on a political note or anything, but I think superheroes played by females are a welcome addition to the big screen, and honestly, we should have had this a long time ago. Still, Patty Jenkins and team bring a great representation of the character to the big screen and have reignited the DCEU. While I was likely to see Justice League, this has definitely made me go from likely to certainly going to see it. And after the first 3 films, I don't think I'd be saying that anytime soon. Wonder Woman provides all that you want in a summer blockbuster and is also a great foundation for, hopefully, some more standalone female superhero films in the future. My rating is an 8 out of 10. Alright, there you guys go. That's gonna do it for this edition of the Plagmanrules podcast. We'll get into some more topics on Friday. We'll see what happens in the movie news this week. We'll try to keep up on all that. A couple of quick pointers before we go. Any ideas or discussion points that you would like to bring up, you can leave a comment on the video here. You can also leave, if you would rather put it in a long-form message, I do have a separate email that is set up, and that's on Gmail. It's plagmanrulespodcast@gmail.com. Again, that is PLAGMANRULES podcast@gmail.com. Any suggestions that you think could help the show, you can leave a comment in the video here, or again, that Gmail address is also a good place to put any suggestions as well. Alright, so we'll see everybody on Friday, and until then, this has been the Plagmanrules podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.